A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir la'inir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Esteemed scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I begin in the name of He who loves us all, because of our strengths, our needs, and everything that makes each of us unique. And I seek permission from our esteemed scholars. I seek permission from our esteemed scholars, more qualified than I, to share my thoughts and experiences today. Jazakallah to the Amanati team for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. To wake everyone up, I'm going to start with an activity. First, I'd like you to take 20 seconds to look around the room and to count as many blue things as you can see. And I will be asking for a number. Go. Okay, stop. Looking straight ahead here to the front of the room, raise your hand if you can tell me exactly how many yellow things you saw. Looking straight ahead. 0, 1. But you're all looking a little bit unsure. You're confused. It's a difficult task, right? When we set our intention to do or see one thing, that is what we will see, do, say, or think. And in doing so, look how much we miss out on. You only set out to notice a particular color and missed out on everything else. Now imagine how much of our God-given potential do we fail to realize by limiting ourselves to only noticing, accepting, and including particular people who seem worthy of our sight in our minds. Allah gave us this ability to see, to truly notice, accept, and include everything and everyone around us, and to see the beauty in everyone, even when their speech or behavior or physical appearance does not fit our picture of normal. So, why is it then that our masjids, community centers, majalis, our speech, thoughts, feelings and attitudes are biased towards neurotypical children and adults? Let's turn to the best of books for guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Qur'an, Bismillahir rahmanir rahim, "And we have revealed the book to you, explaining clearly everything, and a guidance and a mercy and good news for those who submit." Allah did not say He created the Qur'an or Islam or this beautiful or inspiring world for normally developing children and adults. He said, for those who submit. You're awake. And if you have ever heard the dua of an adult with special needs at Fajr, or the way that a child or an adult instantly calms on hearing the Holy Qur'an, you will know that they are of those who submit. So where are they? Why are they not a regular visible presence in our centers, madrasas, gatherings and functions? At the age of 16, I began teaching at our local madrasa in Hujjat, Stanmore, and at the time we had a special needs class for children with disabilities. They used a separate entrance, meaning no one had any real interaction with them apart from their teachers. At 18, I began university to study speech sciences, which would qualify me as a speech and language therapist. And during that first year, all I could think about was, why is all of this knowledge and skills that I'm blessed to be receiving, well, it could and should be shared with the Muslim community, so our children with additional needs can access the madrasa curriculum and be with their peers. At exactly the same time, an amazing mother of a child who happens to have Down syndrome approached me, knowing what I was studying, and said, in mainstream schools, there are accommodations for children with special needs, so they can integrate with their peers and access the same curriculum or a similarly adapted curriculum. Why can't madrasa do the same? I had no answer. Why couldn't we? And isn't Allah's timing perfect? So I put forward a proposal to the principal at the time, who could not have been more encouraging and supportive, and the Learning Support Department was established, which catered for those children whose parents wanted them to be included in mainstream classrooms. So lesson number 1, the fact that someone in a position of authority was willing to take this leap of faith in an idea against huge amounts of stigma, that was a great support and something for us all to learn from. So if any of you here today are listening and are on a senior management team or a decision-making committee, please use your power in the way that Allah wishes. You are in your position because He has placed you there. Challenge stereotypes and help to create an inclusive community. Okay, but look, the road was not so smooth, yes? It never is. A few years later, when the Learning Support Department was well established, we were providing support for children under the age of 9, boys and girls over the age of 9. Someone said, hold up a minute. What about the boys over the age of 9? And as a woman, I was in charge only of the little children and the girls. And they were right. Why were we not providing support for the boys as well? Now, it's notoriously difficult to convince male volunteers to join the team, especially those with no experience of supporting children with additional needs, but alhamdulillah, we did. Now, of course, they were just volunteers with very little experience or teaching background, but very keen and willing to learn. So the next step was to provide training, and I had already created a training program, which is still being used today. So it seems like an easy fix, right? It wasn't. Here came one of our first obstacles. Sadly, the next principal of the madrasa said, no, you cannot provide training. It is haram for a woman to do so, according to Ayatollah Sistani. Those male volunteers left because they felt ill-equipped to do their job, and the saddest thing was that the male students eventually did too. The loss was not mine for not being able to provide training. It was a loss for us even today, our entire community, that we denied an Islamic education and social environment to those children with special needs. An education that the Almighty, not me, that the Almighty says is for everyone. Now at this point you're either going to be shocked, oh, our marja'ah's names were used in that way, or you might be thinking, I don't understand the problem, that was years ago, it's 2022, children with special needs have been on the agenda for many years now, but children and adults with special needs are not agenda items. They are keys to our akhirah in as much as every single person in our community is, and every single person has a right to access the beauty that our communities have to offer, whether they are labeled with a disability or not. The World Health Organization describes barriers as being more than just physical obstacles. It defines barriers as factors in a person's environment that limit their functioning and create disability. It's interesting to note that you won't find in the Qur'an or a hadith a word that translates to the term disabilities. Instead, Allah describes those who have specific needs in terms of their specific needs. Perhaps they have a physical need or a visual impairment. Allah, in His wisdom, as the brother just mentioned, already knew about this social construct, this social model of disability. And He showed us to look, just look, at the beautiful human being in front of you and his or her potential. Yes, they have needs, but that is not everything about them. So let's think for a moment. Who controls participation, inclusion, and acceptance in our communities? Is it the person's level of impairment or the barriers that we put up to their participation? Who creates the dis in disability? Now, some of you might say, well, look, what is stopping a family from bringing their child or teenager or adult brother or sister to the mosque? And you're right, it is a two-way process. Families need to feel confident and hold their heads up high when bringing their family members to the mosque with disabilities. But we also have a responsibility to guarantee that they will not be met with awkward smiles, whispers, turned heads, inappropriate comments, or requests to leave because they're being disruptive. Let's dig deep and examine our hearts. What exactly do our hearts feel, and what is our self-talk when an adult with Down syndrome enters the room, or a child in a wheelchair takes up the space of 4 people, or a teenager with a learning disability talks loudly during the majlis? Because we all know that what runs through our hearts and minds ultimately manifests in behavior towards these families. Our learning support department is thriving, alhamdulillah. We have fought to overcome stigmas and challenges. For example, more and more parents are confident to come forward and share that their child has special needs, so we can provide them with the support they need. And more teachers no longer feel scared when a child with additional needs enters the room and leave them to the side saying, oh, their learning support assistant will sort them out. In Shahr Ramadan, my good friend brought her daughter to a hifth program, and her daughter happens to have Down syndrome, and I wish I had recorded her voice because she so beautifully and very, very loudly vocalized all the way through the recitations. But alhamdulillah, no one flinched, and if they did, the mother didn't care. She sat there proudly because her daughter had a right to be there like every other person in the room. On the whole, no one looked scornfully, no one asked her to move to a separate room. Her voice was a beautiful sound alongside the Qur'an being recited. Now, let's go back to madrasa. Not every child there gets one-to-one support. Sometimes the teachers just need to be made aware of what the child's additional needs are and how to meet those needs in the environment. But the one thing we have done is that every child has what we call a communication passport. It's an A4 document that stays in their bag, and it lets the teachers know what are their strengths and needs, what are their likes and dislikes, and how can they best be supported. Once I met with a teacher to discuss the communication passport of a child, and this child's mother was also a teacher and actually a renowned speaker. And at the start of my meeting, the teacher looked at me aghast and said, "Her child has a disability?" Subhanallah. Now, of course, it begs the thought that if our teachers harbor these feelings in their heart, the very people who should provide a safe, inclusive, and accepting space for our children at madrasa, disability or not, we have a long way to go. I wonder what sins the parents committed to be punished like this. At least in a wheelchair, the child can't run. My child exhausts me. Why bring him to mosque if he can't be quiet during majlis? He's a grown 32-year-old man. Oh, I'm so sorry your son has a disability. You know no one's going to marry your daughter, right? No, you don't need to invite that family. They won't attend anyway. Realistically, these are the things that families are hearing. And I'm hearing you tut, and I'm seeing you shake your heads. But this is sadly our reality. And sadly, just a few of the comments that some, not all, but some families face. So why would they attend community events? Please, let's strive to ensure that families do not fear these consequences by attending our community gatherings. In Surah Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us not to mock another qawm, another group. And inshallah from today, we will promise to take steps to really live these words of advice As Sheikh said earlier, it's not enough to just recite Qur'an and give ourselves a pat on the back on Eid day when we've completed the recitation of one Holy Qur'an. Recite one ayah and really bring it to life. In this way we can really call ourselves Muslims. Now you might be thinking, well, inclusivity is great and I understand it's our God-given responsibility to be this way, but what on earth am I supposed to say to someone, to a child or an adult with a disability? So here are a couple of things that we can do. Number one, look at the person, not the disability. Let's see first a person whose heart yearns to establish a relationship with Allah, just as mine and yours do. I'm not denying that people have disabilities, but don't we all have needs? My times tables knowledge is really dodgy, like really dodgy. I don't understand every single word of the Holy Qur'an that I recite. My mind has a tendency to ruminate over past events, and Sheikh, your lectures are really helpful, but they still do because I'm human. I'm not as sporty as I used to be. These are my needs. But you don't look at me and define me by them. They certainly weren't mentioned in the introduction today. So as you think about your needs, let's remind ourselves with humility that just because sometimes we can visibly see the needs of some children and adults, that does not mean that they should be disadvantaged because of that. Number two, let's forgive the past. Perhaps the stigma, the negative assumptions, the challenges and obstacles, the fear, or anything else that we bring with us when we hear the mention of special needs. Perhaps it's the result of upbringing, negative messaging, negative experiences. It's okay. Value where you're coming from because it's a catalyst for change. Let's not judge each other, ourselves, our past decisions, or the students and families we interact with. Let's be dedicated to moving away from those feelings or stigmas. And let's, most importantly, not allow these filter through generations. Number three, educate yourself. At our madrasa, we run an annual Disability Awareness Day, where we get external speakers, including adults with disabilities, to talk about their needs, and most importantly, how they would like the students to interact with them. And these include Down syndrome, autism, hearing impairment, visual impairment, physical disability, and learning difficulties. So if you don't know, ask. Everyone has a phone and you all have Google. Use it. Number four, speak to the child, the adult, or the family. They have an opinion and they would love for you to be brave enough to approach them. You will not be causing offense if you speak with love, respect, and genuine curiosity. Ask them what they would like from you. Ask them how they would like to participate. When you hold a majalis or a balugh celebration for your child, invite them, not just to sit at the side and tick your boxes. Wow, amazing, you invited a child with disability. You're so kind. No. Invite them to actually take part. Because believe me, and I know that you all know this, the salawat of a child with additional needs is the loudest and the most heartfelt salawat you will ever hear. What would our Imam think when he returns and he sees that we have left the most beautiful people behind? Didn't our Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam absolutely love to hear the adhan recited by Bilal who had a speech difficulty? If the greatest man who walked the earth could revere a man with speech difficulties, why do we find it so difficult to push past our stigmas and assumptions, to discover the real beauty in the people around us?